This little thing that you might have seen show up in the last couple weeks worth of videos isn't a striking fashion accessory. Well, it is, but not one that I'm wearing by choice. It's actually a smart ring. And I think in this video, I need to answer two different questions. First, do you even need a smart ring? And second, is this Ultrahuman Ring Air any good? Let's start with the basics first, like what makes this ring smart? Despite the raw titanium outer coating, if you look inside, you will notice that there are, in fact, electronics in there. In fact, it's kind of an entire Fitbit, but built into a ring. This little sensor that you can see in the middle is the heart rate and blood oxygen sensor. There's also a skin temperature sensor, and there's an accelerometer for step and activity tracking. To be clear though, this isn't like a smartwatch where you get notifications or there's even any way to interact with it beyond just syncing data over Bluetooth. This is just a sleep and activity tracker. While you've likely got 100 questions you want answers to, I imagine the most pressing would be battery life and charging, and I don't blame you. The idea that this ring can do activity and sleep tracking is already kind of insane, so it must need charging every 10 minutes, right? Well, amazingly, through a mixture of not doing continuous monitoring and some black magic, this 24 milliamp hour battery in here, yes, 24 milliamp hours, 50 times smaller than a AAA battery, lasts for up to 6 days and takes 2 or 3 hours to charge from flat on their USB-C inductive charger. The ring can store up to 6 days of data too, so you don't have to carefully monitor it all that often if you don't want to. That is frankly incredible, and through the magic of having worn this for a little over 2 weeks now, I can confirm that the battery life is pretty legit. I've only charged it, I think, twice in those 2 weeks, not including the initial setup charging. So, if the battery is more than adequate, the charging is pretty fast. I mean, you'd imagine a 24 milliamp hour cell could be charged almost instantly, but there's definitely something funky going on with the charging here. Anyway, we can focus on what this thing actually does. As I said, you've got heart rate, blood oxygen, skin temperature, and motion data, and it seems Ultrahuman can do quite a lot with that. We're going to be spending a lot of time looking at their app because that is where all of the magic happens. The ring is just the data collection tool. The app is where that information gets used and where you can see things like battery life too, as there is no outward indications that the ring is on or working, save for the occasional green or orange light from the sensors taking measurements. And interestingly, the app changes throughout the day. During the start and sort of middle of the day, the app focuses on your last night's sleep, your movement and activity, and also the caffeine delay window block, which shows you how to optimize your caffeine intake. Not that that matters to me because I don't take any amount of caffeine at all, but still. If I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure how accurate both the sleep and step tracking actually is. The steps are somewhat believable, but likely inflated a little, and the sleep tracking, well, that's pretty off. It says that I'm awake in bursts throughout the night, when in reality, I sleep like a damn log. I fall asleep at between midnight and 1 o'clock, and wake up between 8 and 9 AM, and don't wake up in between. The ring disagrees, quite drastically in fact. One thing I do agree with though is that it says that I basically never enter deep sleep, and I would tend to agree there. I don't feel rested when I wake up, although I haven't felt like that, I've had a sort of good night's sleep for a decade or so I guess I'm used to it. One of the key things the app wants you to do, but I'm kind of unable to do, is add tags for why you had a bad night's sleep, or your heart rate variability wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. This is, at least in theory, a pretty necessary step in making improvements to your life. Tracking why you're having a bad time and giving you the data to make positive changes. The problem is that I have no idea why I don't sleep well. I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke or do recreational drugs, I'm not sick, or as the app puts it, at a high immune load, I'm no more stressed than usual, so I can't exactly tag anything here. In theory, you can tag stuff that you're trying out. Earplugs are one of the built-in tags which you could tag having used them as an example, although if I'm honest, that's way too much effort for my ADHD brain to handle. In fact, tagging stuff in an app is too much work for me to do repeatably, so I would appreciate options to add notifications to remind me to do that. In fact, I'd really like options to change the damn notifications in general, because my god, they are useless. Literally, as I was writing this, I got one saying, "You're a mover. By taking action and moving, you're making progress towards your fitness goals. Keep up the great work." While I appreciate that some people might like an app cheering them on from the sidelines, this is just annoying to me. This is notification clutter, and honestly makes me want to not move just to spite it. Luckily, there are at least a couple of controls, one for frequency, although no option to turn them off entirely, just minimal mode, and toggles for those movement alerts, circadian alignment, caffeine window, and marketing alerts. I've disabled them all now because none of those are actually helpful for me. As you get towards the end of the day, the circadian alignment window moves up to the top and tells you to stop looking at screens and avoid caffeine around 6 hours before bed. Legitimately, I got a notification telling me to start winding down at 6:30 p.m. when it knew that I wasn't going to be going to bed until 12:30. On a Saturday! Interestingly, if it detects patterns that it recognises, it essentially picks labels for you and then gives advice. I didn't sleep well on Saturday night as I was excited for an event on Sunday, and the Ring/app decided that that was a symptom of me getting sick and tagged my sleep with high immune load and told me to rest and take it easy. I can say that at least a couple of days later now, I'm still not sick, so I can confirm that was an erroneous reading, and if I was to be blunt, I don't think that the Ring can collect enough data to give such direct medical advice. It doesn't know that I'm immunocompromised and taking 6 different medications that could have affected things, the fact that I had an event I was excited for and so didn't sleep particularly well, and I don't really want to tell it all of that data just so that it can store it on their servers. I'll come back to that in a moment. In theory, this could be really cool, especially on a meta-analysis level, but it does also rely on heavily on self-reporting information like, yes, I got sick a day later. And especially if the app just imposes those labels on you, it's creating unreliable data that I assume it's going to rely on later in a bit of a vicious cycle. It also tagged that sleep with late caffeine, which again, I don't consume caffeine. The other bit of health info that I'm really not sure about, and the reason why I had to wait over 2 weeks to make this video, is the ultra age. This is, in theory anyway, a report on how fast your brain, heart, and blood are aging. Despite having 16 days of data as of filming, I only have access to the brain age stat, not pulse or blood, although the brain age looks to be derived from their sleep debt stat, combined with what I'm guessing is some data that they've selected to say that basically if you consistently have sleep debt, you'll suffer later in life, I guess. Again, this feels dangerously close to actual medical advice, all derived from just pulse, blood oxygen, skin temperature, and motion. That feels like a stretch to me, and I would hate to make changes to my life based on this artificial score. It also feels a little scaremongery, like, oh watch out, you're aging 1.9x faster than you should, especially when the data that it's basing this on is middling in accuracy. It consistently says I'm awake throughout the night when that just isn't the case, as an example. So to say that then, based on that, my brain is shriveling before my eyes feels misguided. Of course, you can also do exercise tracking, everything from gaming to marathons, and during that, it will run the battery down a fair bit faster than normal because it's doing continuous tracking. If you do use it for activity tracking, then you will need to charge it more frequently, although the fact that it can charge relatively quickly means that isn't such a big deal. This also does factor in the sorts of data that the app can show you, so stuff like your VO2 max, which really needs multiple aerobic workouts to give you an accurate reading, not just the single breath exercise I did to initially get a result. Still, it is, in theory at least, nice to have the data, although if I'm honest, I'm not really sure how much I, or really most people, have for data like this. For actual workout training stuff, sure. And again, you can tag what you were doing and what sort of pre-game stuff you took, you know, how many kilos of creatine you stuffed down your protein-filled face before working out. That kind of stuff, that might be helpful then. Sure, this data might make some sense, but for just every day? I don't know. I don't know how useful that is to me. I should also talk about the fit and fitting process. When you order a ring, you are sent this ring fitting kit. It's plastic versions of the exact shape of the ring, including the little flat spot where the main sensor sits. It also comes in a impressive range of sizes. I went for a size 12, the third largest, whereas my wife would have opted for more like a 7 or so. The size 12 fits both my middle and index fingers. While I initially did wear it on my middle finger, I quickly found out why they recommend it to be on your index finger. This thing is pretty huge. Like, my wedding band is already pretty big ring, but this is just miles larger. If you do wear it on your middle finger, you'll quickly find it digging into the bone of both of your ring and index fingers. It's that wide. Even with it on my index finger, I've noticed my middle finger has a little sort of indent on the side where the ring touches. I would argue that this is intrusively larger too. It sits so proud of your finger that it's the first thing to hit anything when you're touching stuff with your palm, like you hit it on everything. You catch it on stuff a lot too. It gets in the way. Like, when I'm playing the drums, the sticks tap on it and sort of feel a bit weird in my hands. And while it is ironically worryingly light, it isn't half an intrusion to wear. I should caveat this point by saying that I'm autistic and have a fair few sensory issues. I don't wear watches for that reason, so I'm likely quite pessimistic in my view of this because, well, for 2 weeks straight I've basically been, like, mildly uncomfortable having this on my hand. Still, it is noticeably large, and I think between the width and the length, this is really only suited to male hands. This isn't dainty or quaint, it's bold and imposing. The shape also makes it uncomfortable too. The design is basically a C-channel of the titanium with the electronics inside and then a layer of resin to infill it to secure the components. That does mean that it's fully waterproof, which is nice, but it also means that it has a thick, flat edge that actually caused a blood blister on my palm when wearing it on my middle finger and actually using my hands for drumsticks or ratchets. This is not a comfortable thing to wear. Another concern, which is possibly a bigger deal for me because I'm autistic, but who knows, maybe you care too, is privacy. And the fact that the data that this ring collects is synced to your phone and then to Ultrahuman servers. This is clear when skipping through the data. It shows a toast notification at the bottom saying syncing with server. Their privacy policy also makes it clear that they collect all the data from the ring. To me, that's quite a stretch to accept that someone else has all of the data on my location, heart rate, sleep times, quality, my activity, everything. Hell, even my height, weight, age, and gender. That is a lot of information for me to be freely giving to this company. The fact that there aren't many other controls beyond share data with coaches and support is pretty annoying. I would much rather have the option to store data on their servers rather than it be a requirement. And that alone, I think, would make me not buy one of these things, regardless of anything else. Since we're talking about concerns, I have a couple more. First, the titanium, which is supposedly coated in a layer of tungsten carbide, what my wedding band is actually made from, has managed to be scratched pretty badly, all in just 2 or so weeks of wearing it. Considering my wedding band is scratch-free, and I've worn that through every car repair job I've done in the last 3 years, this thing being so scuffed up isn't a great sign, especially since I took it off for the one major car repair thing I did this in the last 2 weeks. Actually, another thing is the ads for their other products. This one is a home air quality monitor that will set you back £489, and the other is a glucose monitoring patch which costs £169 per month. While these do seem to all integrate together and give you a fuller picture of your health, and I'm sure they work wonderfully, spending nearly £1,000 up front and then £169 per month, assumedly forever, is a hell of a lot of money. Unless you either have so much disposable income that isn't a decent chunk of your monthly outgoings, for context my mortgage is £450 a month, or you are truly getting your money's worth when it comes to improving your life thanks to the data, then these aren't for you. And it's annoying that they're doing push notifications the day after you set this thing up to say, hey, you should buy this other stuff too. And I think that brings us nicely on to our first question. Do you even need a smart ring? Well, personally, no, I don't. I'll be taking this thing off after this video. I don't find much use for the data that this provides beyond telling me what I already know. Obviously can't speak for the general population, but I think if you've ever tried a Fitbit or smartwatch and then not found any use for the data they provide, then this is the exact same thing, just with, an extra bit of size and shape. Realistically, there isn't anything majorly wrong with this thing. So if you are sure you can make use of the data that it provides and you don't mind the size, then by all means, feel free to splash out the £329 for this ring. I should note that when they say it's subscription free, there are in fact 4 possible subscriptions. 5 if you include the glucose monitors, I guess, but the first main one is the Ultrahuman X membership, basically insurance and premium support. That's £36 a year or £54 for 2 years, or between £2.25 and £3 per month. Then there's the cardio adaptability, which I think just gives you more data on heart rate during sleep, which is £2.90 per month. There's also AFib detection, which detects atrial fibrillation, something that I've experienced, and trust me, you don't need a ring to tell you it's happening. That's £4.90 a month. And lastly, there are is the newest subscription, UltraSync for Tesla, which is £6.90 a month, and basically pulls your drive data from your Tesla to give you a drive readiness score, proactive climate control suggestions, and a detailed ride history. It tracks for me that the sort of person who would buy this also has a Tesla. Yeah. So, do you need a smart ring? Almost certainly not. If you do, this one does seem to mostly do what it says, and with its sort of health-focused approach, I can see why you might opt for this, should you have the cash and a desire to use the data anyway. Unfortunately, that isn't me, but if it is you, please do let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what sort of use you would get from this sort of thing. I will leave a link to them in the description if you're interested. If you want to see more videos like this one, you can hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. Check out plenty of other videos on the end cards. And otherwise, if you want to check out my own hardware, the open source response time or latency testing tools, feel free to head to osrtt.com, linked in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next video.